Hi everyone, and welcome. In this webinar, we're going to give you an overview of migrating Structure from Jira Data Center to Jira Cloud. Migrating to Structure Cloud offers numerous benefits, including improved performance, scalability, and access to the latest features. We'll focus on the critical pre-migration steps and key phases to ensure a smooth transition. Here's the specific agenda for our session. We'll discuss migrating Structure alongside Jira. We'll show you how to prepare for migration, your migration options, and critical pre-migration steps. You'll see a demo showing how to migrate your Structure and Jira data together, and then a demo showing how to migrate your Structure and Jira data separately. Lastly, we'll highlight some resources that will be helpful to you on your migration journey. But before we get started, here are some quick housekeeping notes. Since this is an on-demand webinar, feel free to skip ahead to specific sections that interest you or that you want to learn about. If you have any questions while you are watching, we encourage you to reach out to our support team. At the end of this on-demand webinar, we'll provide you with some next steps to further help you migrate to Structure Cloud. So, let's start with the what, why, and how of migrating Structure alongside Jira. For the what, Structure migration is the process of moving your existing Structure assets from Jira on-premise to Jira Cloud, so they are fully available after your Jira migration. It's all about having your favorite Structure functionality in Cloud so that you can continue working the same way that you're used to. So, why do this together with Jira? If you bring your Structure data along for the ride, all your project hierarchies, boards, configurations, and even Gantt charts show up in Cloud ready to go. That means less time setting things up again and more time actually working from day one. And how do you make it happen? The easiest way is with Atlassian's Jira Cloud Migration Assistant, JCMA for short. It takes care of both your Jira data and your Structure data in one smooth process, so you don't have to juggle things manually. But before you hit that migrate button, there's a bit of prep work. First, know the differences. The Structure app on Jira Server or DC isn't a perfect copy of the Jira Cloud version. Take some time to review which features line up and where there are differences so that you're not caught off guard. We have a comprehensive explanation of existing feature parity in our Help Center. A link for that is included at the end of this webinar. Also, we're constantly working to bring missing Jira on-premise functionality to Cloud so that you will have fewer differences in how you work after transitioning to Cloud. Second, audit your structures. If you're a long-term Structure user, you've likely created lots of Structure boards. Now's the time to do some house cleaning of boards that are not used anymore. You don't need to bring these obsolete boards to the Cloud. The Manage Structures page can help you find boards that haven't been opened for a while. You can also use some groovy scripts to search for unused structures. We have examples of these scripts in our JCMA documentation, so be sure to check that out. A link is included at the end of this webinar. If any of your active structures still rely on the legacy synchronizers functionality, you'll need to rebuild them using automation generators before the migration. Also, make sure that every view you want to have on Cloud is tied to a structure. Otherwise, those orphan views won't migrate. Third, check structure size. In Cloud, there's a 30,000 item cap per structure. This is due to architectural limitations in Cloud. If you've got structures bigger than 30,000 items, you'll need to break them down or optimize them before migration. Our Help Center has a best practices guide on how to deal with these large boards. The link for that is included at the end of this webinar. Now let's discuss migration options. You basically have two paths. Migration with the Jira Cloud Migration Assistant, which is the recommended path. The JCMA is Atlassian's native tool that moves your Jira data and your Structure data together. It's automated, reliable, and probably much less stressful. Or take the manual migration path, the do-it-yourself route. This means manually recreating all your structures, views, and Gantt setups in Cloud from scratch. It's doable, but it's a lot of work. And just so you know, XML export is not supported here, so manual really means manual. Here are a few final steps to do before you launch your migration. Prepare the environment by installing the correct apps. Make sure the Structure and Gantt apps are already installed and active in your Cloud site. Check your permissions. The person running the migration needs admin rights in both the Jira Server or DC environment and the Jira Cloud one. Take note of which features won't carry over. As already mentioned, some Structure on-premise features don't exist in Cloud, so you may need to adjust some Structure boards after the migration. And finally, test it first. If possible, run a trial migration to a Cloud sandbox. It's the best way to spot problems and fine-tune the process before touching your production site. And now, Alex, our Structure and Gantt charts expert, is going to demonstrate how to migrate to Structure Cloud.
Hi everyone! I'm going to show you practical steps required for successful migration of Structure plugin using Jira Cloud Migration Assistant. I'm going to use two Jira instances, one in DC and one in Cloud environment. My DC instance has several Jira projects created with multiple issues inside. It also has user group and schemes which are normally associated with Jira projects. And of course I have several structures created that utilize my Jira project's data. Each of these structures use different aspects of product functionality, so we can see how it will be transferred over to the cloud instance. My first structure example represents standard top-down hierarchy built with multiple extent generators and various standard Jira fields shown in columns. The second one is a simple one-level view, but with the Gantt chart attached. Next example is a manual structure or structure built without automation generators, so we will see how these types of boards are migrated to cloud. And finally, a structure board named Not Migrated Features, which contains functionalities that don't exist in cloud the same way as in DC environment, and some additional actions would require after migration to rebuild exactly the same view. Now let's quickly look at our cloud instance. At the moment, it's totally empty and there is no Jira data existing here. I have already installed Structure and Structure Gantt as plugins, and if we open Structure, we can see it is also empty and there are no boards existing here. So let's return back to the Jira instance. To be able to perform migration with Jira Cloud Migration Assistant, you need to have admin access both in DC and cloud instances. First, let's open the migration menu, which is under the System Settings and Import and Export section. This brings us to the Migration Assistant homepage. Here we can take various actions before starting the migration process. Because this webinar is dedicated to migrating Structure application, we're not going to cover here any steps required to migrate Jira data itself. For the guidance on how to migrate Jira data, you can refer to Atlassian documentation. From the Structure migration perspective, we are interested here in Assess Your Apps option. In this section, we are selecting applications that will be included into the migration with GCMA. So we need to make sure that Structure and Structure Gantt are marked as needed in cloud. This step is very important because if applications are not marked as needed in cloud, they will not be included in any migration you perform with GCMA. Another preliminary step we need to take on this page is to check Prepare Your Apps section. Here we need to give an agreement to move our apps data alongside with Jira data. This permission needs to be granted only once and then it's saved automatically for all subsequent migrations. All the other options on this page are related to Jira data, so I'm going to skip it all and return to the previous page. We have two options to start the migration: run it directly from the DC instance or run it from cloud instance. In my first migration example, I'm going to run it from the cloud side, so I'm selecting the appropriate option, which then forces me to choose the cloud side where we're going to migrate to. Now, as we redirect it to the cloud side, we can create a new migration configuration. There are several obligatory steps you need to take to create that configuration. We need to select migration source, destination, give our migration a name, select its type, and finally choose the migration method. For my case, I select Migrate Projects and Apps. On the next step, we can select if we want to migrate all the projects at once, which would include all the apps data as well, or we want to select which Jira projects or application data to move. I will select Migrate All Projects because this is the simplest way to move everything at once, all the Jira data and all the apps data at the same attempt. I will keep all the settings corresponding to Jira data by default, and at the bottom of the list I need to check that Structure apps are included into the migration. Then we can run checks and GCMA will make sure that everything is correct and the data is not corrupted or anything. Depending on how big your Jira instance is, it might take different amount of time. And after it's been completed, we should see that everything is ready for the migration, including our apps. Now we can run the migration and its status will change in progress. We can open it and see how it progresses over time. Depending on how large your Jira instance is, the migration time may vary significantly. If everything goes well, we should see that migration status is changed to complete, and statuses of all the individual parts of the migration are also complete. Now let's open the Structure menu on the cloud side. We can see that all 4 structures present here. We can also go into the Jira Projects tab and make sure that all the projects from the DC instance are successfully migrated. Now let's also check the migration status from the Structure Cloud settings. We need to go into the apps and under the Structure Cloud, select Migration. We can see that our latest migration is marked Review Required. That means the migration is complete, but some of the structures need to be reviewed and checked for consistency. So let's return to All Structures menu and perform some checks. First of all, I will need to change structure owners because a user role I used on DC side to create these structures does not exist on the cloud side. So I have to reassign all the structure ownerships to a new admin user I logged by on the cloud. Now I can open and modify these migrated structures. Let's start from the ILM overview. We can see that all the issue types are mapped correctly. The hierarchy looks right. We have the columns. All the data inside it seems correct. We have the same generators. So there is no issues over there. That means that I can safely go to the notification bar and mark this structure as reviewed. Now let's repeat the process for the rest of the structures. Let's look at the one with the Gantt chart. Here everything also looks fine. Let's open the Gantt. We have taskbars, we have dependencies, the color coding is present. Let's look into the settings. The settings are also seem legit, and we can mark this structure as reviewed as well. The same process for manual structure. Since there weren't any generators originally, we should not see any here as well. The order of hierarchy is correct. And you can also notice, since this is a pretty simple structure, there's no notification asking to review this specific one because it was recognized as totally correct automatically. Now finally let's look at the not migrated feature structure, the one that contains functionalities that don't exist the same way on cloud they do in DC. Let's start with the generators assessment. You can see right away there is unsupported automation manual sort. So manual sort generator doesn't exist in cloud, so it's just marked as unsupported. If we quickly look at the DC version, we can see that I'm using filter by field, selecting different statuses as options. Because filter by field is also not supported in cloud, it was automatically replaced with filter by GQL, which pretty much does the same. Structure memo is replaced in cloud by flex item, which also represents the same functionality. Now let's look at the columns. You can see that in DC, I had 4 columns, the formula showing health metrics, the risk column built with testy app, the icons, and the transition dates. Out of these 4, only formula column was migrated, but it's not showing the metric. The reason is this formula uses wiki markup in DC, and this syntax doesn't exist in Jira Cloud. Instead, we can use wiki markdown, which is slightly different from a syntax perspective, so we have to rebuild this formula slightly to produce the same result. As for the other columns, the standalone testy plugin that existed in DC is now built in directly in Structure, so we will just need to recreate the same column from the scratch. Icons column does not exist in Cloud version, as well as transitions dates column. But these can also be replicated by using different column types and formulas. So here I updated Structure using functionality existing in Cloud. Instead of manual sorting, I used sort by rank generator that allowed me manually organize items by required order. In the health metric formula, I replaced wiki markup with wiki markdown syntax. Built a new tasty column. I used separate columns for priority issue types, assignee and reporter, and rebuilt transition date column with formula as well. So you can see now that the original DC structure and migrated cloud structure look pretty much the same, but some of the functionalities required to be replicated or rebuilt based on the existing options on cloud. Now let's look at the another migration scenario. Sometimes you need to migrate Jira data first and then migrate application data on top of that. In this case, you can also successfully migrate with GCMA, but the migration will take several steps. First, you migrate all the Jira projects and all other relevant Jira data with GCMA, and only after you have everything on the cloud side, you start migrating applications with GCMA. Very important note, if on any stage of migrating Jira data, you intentionally or accidentally migrated some of the apps data, and then you started migrating apps data separately, you'll get all the structures duplicated. So before you start moving your structures on top of Jira data, make sure you don't have any structures already existing in the cloud. And if you have any, you probably want to delete them before migrating all the structures again to the cloud side. To showcase my next example, I have my Jira projects migrated to the cloud in advance, and I also cleared all the structures that existed here from my previous migration. This time I will create a new migration directly in DC side, which is also an option here. I will call this migration structure because I'm only migrating structures on this step. On the next window, I'm going to skip all the Jira data because it has been already moved to DC. And we'll make sure that my Structure app and Gantt are selected for the migration. Now I save this migration and run checks. I make sure once again that my applications were included into the migration. So it is ready to be started, and if I click Run, it will move all the structures and Gantts from DC side to the cloud. But I'm gonna pause here and play out in our scenario. Let's say we don't want to move all the structures we have on our DC side, but only some specific ones that we want to continue working with on the cloud. To do so, I will return to the main migration screen. The migration we just created is saved and ready to be started. To select which structures will be taken into the migration, I need to go to the Structure menu and select Migrate to Cloud option. Here we will add a new structure migration configuration. And this configuration must have the same name as the GCMA migration we created earlier. If this structure configuration has a different name, it will be ignored and all the structures will be taken by GCMA while running the migration. So I give it the same name, which is Structure, and at the bottom I can select which structures will be included into the move. By default, all the structures are included, but in my case, I only want to move two of them. It will be LM Overview and Gantt Chart Structure. I also make sure Migrate Structure Gantt checkbox is selected as well. Now I can save the configuration and return back to GCMA menu. Here we can now run our previously created migration. After some time, migration will be marked as complete, so now we can go to the cloud side and look at the list of all structures. I need to refresh the page, and here we have our two structures successfully migrated. Same way as before, I need to change structure owner to my new user on cloud, and then we can open it and see how everything played out. Everything looks right. The generators, columns, issue types, everything in place. So let's check another one. Let's open the Gantt. And as previously, Gantt looks right and all the data looks correct. So we can mark this as reviewed. So this concludes our practical part about migrating structures by using Jira Cloud Migration Assistant. At the end, I want to mention that GCMA is the recommended way to move Structure and Jira data to the cloud. If for some reason you use other options to migrate your Jira information from DC to cloud and then use GCMA to migrate structures, it may not work correctly because in this case, Jira data and structure data could not be mapped automatically to each other. So using GCMA for both Jira data and structure data is always a good way to make sure that everything is transferred successfully and reliably. Thank you for your attention and see you at other Tempo webinars.
Here are some resources to help you migrate to cloud. The JCMA documentation, the Tempo Help Center, Structure Feature Comparison, DC and Cloud, Structure Best Practices, Structure Scripts Library, the Tempo Support Portal, and a link to contact sales for a Tempo on Cloud demo. We wish you all the best with your migration. Thanks for watching and have a great day.